Hey everyone, Jim and Eric here this week with Keeping It Real. We're going to talk about Rogue One undergoing reshoots and sort of, in general, what we think about what that means for the Star Wars Anthology films, or A Star Wars Story as they're called. So yeah, that was the report this week, Eric, that it's going to undergo about a month, 4 weeks of expensive reshoots. And apparently the Disney brass were not happy with Gareth Edwards, the director's initial cut of the picture, and they wanted to be more tonally in line with Star Wars The Force Awakens and with the Star Wars movies in general. That was too much of a war movie.
Yes.
So what do you think about this?
All right. I'm, as I'll often be, the voice of optimism, the silver lining, the glass half full person. I'll say that, first off, reshoots.
Mine's fuller than yours.
And I really hope people remember at this point the fact of a movie getting reshoots, especially any tentpole franchise movie. That alone is not a red flag. They all do it. Every single one, every single Marvel movie, every single DC movie, every big action movie.
Yeah.
It's usually worked into the initial schedule, I know, at this point.
Yeah,
You know,
I mean, Civil War had reshoots.
Yeah, it had like 2 weeks of reshoots. Like it's pretty much part of the plan because they know they're going to look at the rough cut, look at the assembly, and be like, "Yeah, we need this, we need that, we didn't get that. We have to shoot a post-credit scene."
Yes.
But it's definitely part of the process. So the fact that they're doing reshoots alone shouldn't be like, "Oh my God, it must be a disaster." They're doing 4 weeks versus 2 weeks. I would still say it's not like, oh my God, they're going to change every single thing about the movie. The tone thing, I understand that's probably the biggest red flag for people because I think a lot of people are excited by the idea that these movies, the anthology movies or the stories, Star Wars stories, can kind of do their own thing. And does that mean, oh, they want them cookie cutter, they want them exactly the same?
Yeah.
I don't know. That's the question where we don't really know exactly what Disney.
Well, I mean, the reshoot report comes on the heels of two other kind of interesting things that happened where they canceled the Marvel comic adaptation of it, and then there was that book with the images that leaked, the visual guide that a publisher put up, and part of that may have been that maybe the things that are being advertised in those images aren't going to be in the movie anymore, or they're changing something. I mean, to me, it's the idea of tone being an issue is a little upsetting because I thought the whole point of these Star Wars standalone movies was that they weren't, one, going to be tied to, that we were going to investigate so many other facets of this galaxy far, far away, and that you could tell different stories that you could do, and that would mean a different tone. Gareth Edwards did raise some eyebrows when he did at Celebration say that, you know, there's no Force in this movie, there's no Jedis, and I'm paraphrasing it, but he kind of said there's not any God to come and save you.
Right, right.
So that it was going to be a straight up war movie, and that footage we saw, you heard the crackle of the radio and troops under fire, and like it was kind of harrowing.
Yeah, I think again this is one of those strange places where, because I want these movies too to be like able to sort of find their own little pockets of the Star Wars universe and their own little vibe. At the same time, I will say, if you're Disney and you're spending, you know, $150 million or however much, you know, these are not like tiny little low budget Star Wars movies. And I was talking about this on Twitter yesterday because some people were like, "Oh, do they not want it to be dark at all?" And I go, "I don't know. I don't think that would be the case because there are still Star Wars stories being made right now, like new canon stories. If you read a lot of the stuff that is pretty damn dark, but maybe it's an intangible. Maybe it is. Do you watch that movie as it is now, and it doesn't feel, and this is again the weird intangible thing, like Star Wars, you know?"
Yeah.
And I was thinking about Empire and how, you know, that's most people's favorite, and all the things they say are true. It's like, it's more atmospheric. It's you know, got sort of some more depth. It is darker, but it still feels like Star Wars, you know? And I do wonder, maybe that was it. Maybe Rogue One, they're like, doesn't feel like a Star Wars movie, and that's what they're trying to get back to.
You know, but here's another thing that I think it was Hollywood Reporter said that the reshoots might also allow them to add in Alden Ehrenreich as young Han Solo, and that the movie ends basically 10 minutes before New Hope begins, so it's a direct prequel.
Yeah, I mean, the 10 minutes thing, you know, I wonder if it's really that specific, you know, I mean, but I will say
Princess Leia should be here in about 10 minutes.
Look at camera. I mean, the innate story of this, it is, you know, a prequel in so much as like they are trying to steal the plans that we know that begin Star Wars, right? So it is a lead-in movie in that sense. I'm pretty skeptical if report about Han is true, and I hope it's not, for a couple reasons. One being the weirdness of it being a different actor when it is literally like now the exact time frame of A New Hope.
And he's 10 years younger than Harrison Ford was.
And that's why I don't think it's going to be true. Like I don't think it's going to be true that he'll be in there. But I also, again, I hope not. I don't think that's needed. It feels like, how would that not be sort of, you know, gratuitous?
It's just Jyn Erso kicking him out of bed.
Yes, yeah. You pirates, you'll never change. So I hope that part is not true, but I wonder if it is. There's a part
because
of me
that to me speaks to a larger issue then of, again, the standalone movies were supposed to be separate from the main saga. That was the whole idea. And if you now bring in that the first two are going to be Rogue One, a direct prequel to New Hope, and young Han Solo movie, another prequel, you're still tied to those movies. It's not delivering on the promise that was made to fans of like all new Star Wars stories, you know, and you won't know what happens next kind of thing.
Yeah, and I do think they definitely can and should do some that are just completely disassociated, in no way, have none of the same characters. I will say this did come up last year. I'm 90% sure Kathleen Kennedy talked about this. And basically she was saying, you know, we know that because the first two were doing a Rogue One or Han Solo, everyone's like, oh, they're just going to be prequels. Yeah. And she was basically inferring that, look, and this is of course true for all these companies, for Lucasfilm, for Marvel, how they've got so much planned that they haven't announced. She's like, look, these are the first two we're doing. That's just how it worked out schedule-wise. We have some stuff that I promise is in no way a prequel to anything you've seen. That made me think like they have a lot more that's in the pipeline, and she seemed pretty, you know, confident that when we'd hear what those are, we wouldn't feel like.
And yet we still haven't heard anything about that Josh Trank movie that he dropped out of.
Right. And there was a lot of rumors it was a Boba Fett movie, but yeah.
Yeah. Well, hopefully, I just, for me, the idea of Han Solo possibly being in it, and I do think, you know, that movie's going to start filming in January. You know, if they really did cast him now, wouldn't you kind of want to introduce them though to your next big Star Wars movie, especially when the last time you saw Han Solo on screen, spoiler, he dies. Yeah. You know, like so.
I mean, I can see that side of it, and that's.
I think it's a huge mistake.
Yeah, but, that's probably the biggest reason to do it. I agree, a huge mistake. Because as it is, I mean, this is a Star Wars movie. It's a setup for stuff that happens in New Hope. And more importantly, the biggest rumor that sounds pretty likely is that Vader's in this movie. Yeah. That's all you need. Like, you know, Vader himself is such a touchstone of Star Wars that they don't need to also. And I'm sure Leia's going to be name dropped, you know, in some respect. So you don't need it to be like.
You see her from the back of her head with the buns.
Maybe. Oh, the princess is just arriving. Flight leaves in 10 minutes.
Exactly. You know, another thing that struck me about this though is that Rogue One, it's kind of a similar, in some ways so far, to Suicide Squad in that it's about, you know, the main character is essentially a criminal who is being sent on a suicide mission to go, you know, the bad guy who has to do good kind of thing. Yeah. And then the idea too that, you know, they're going through reshoots and, you know, questions of tone. Yeah. And then putting in kind of your most popular anchor character, whether it's Batman or Han Solo or something like that. It does kind of feel like Rogue One might be the Suicide Squad of Star Wars movies there.
I think that is valid. I mean, obviously there's a huge difference, which is Suicide Squad coming off of Batman versus Superman versus Rogue One coming off of Force Awakens. But, you know, I was reading some people say, and it's true, it's like, look, Rogue One in its own way is, okay, nothing is as important as Force Awakens as far as relaunching the franchise, but it's also really important because it's not Episode 8, because it is like, this is the first time ever, unless you're going to count the Ewok Adventures, that, you know, they're like really being like, okay, we're going to do a Star Wars movie that is not part of like the core story. and we want to establish for people that this is going to be an ongoing thing, you know?
Yeah.
And we've talked before about how we're sure it's got to be confusing on a marketing level. How do you even make sure that people, at a glance, are going to be people who don't understand this isn't the sequel to Force Awakens? So there's a lot riding on this movie establishing what is a Star Wars movie besides for the episodes.
But it seems also to me then that I do wonder if Disney isn't getting cold feet in the whole idea of standalone movies, because, you know, Force Awakens worked. They want things that work.
Yeah.
And, you know, we did name Rogue One as one of our big 16 biggest gambles of 2016.
Yeah.
And it is a gamble because if, you know, if this movie doesn't work, it'll make money, but if it doesn't work in some way, it's now like you have kind of lost a little bit of traction that you got off of Force Awakens, like the excitement that Star Wars works, it's back, everything. You don't want to return to anything, any reminder of like the prequels where Star Wars itself, its quality was in doubt.
Right,
you know?
right. I do think, though, that we'll get to a point. I mean, if, knock on wood, you know, Rogue One comes out and is a well-received, well, it's going to be successful, but, you know, it's still a well-received movie.
Yeah.
I think down the line, even if right now they were getting cold feet, we'll get there, because you look at Marvel, and I think the biggest example is Guardians, because yes, I know, guys, like, it is connected, you know, Thanos is in it, and there's a new Infinity Stone. But when you saw how they marketed that movie, yeah, they said from the studio that brought you Iron Man, but in no way was it like, here's a sequel, here's a connection. And it was really like an entirely literal different part of the universe.
Yeah.
So I think that once they're a few movies in, maybe they'll feel more comfortable saying like, okay, here is a truly, you know, just completely own weird thing about some characters you've never heard of on a planet you've never heard of, dealing with a situation you've never heard of, you know?
Yeah.
But it might take them doing more safe bets like the Han Solo movie, you know, for a little while.
Do you really convinced Han Solo movie is a safe bet? I feel like it's a huge risk in a way.
On perception, I know reaction-wise, but I mean, again, you know, I hate the, you know, I'll say, like, even with the prequels, they're all hits, you know, but of course you still don't want that perception of like, oh, you know, you don't want it to be like the Hobbit movies, like, oh, people are going to them, but are they really like loving them? So I think Han Solo is perceived as a safe bet because it's a Han Solo movie, and everyone who's grumbling about they shouldn't do it, they should never cast anyone else, those people are all going to see the movie.
Yeah.
You know?
Also, it's Lord and Miller.
Yeah.
The Lego movie.
But
guys.
yeah. But even that aside, those are all the people complaining are also guaranteed ticket sales. So and you'll get people who don't care go, oh, Han Solo, sure.
Yeah.
So that's why I mean by safe bet as far as like just selling tickets opening weekend. Then of course you have to deliver something that people are liking, and that's where Lord and Miller, I believe, will.
Yes, they will deliver.
Yeah.
Final thoughts then on the Star Wars standalone movies. They have the potential to be a really remarkable kind of experiment. I just think though that, you know, it's Disney and it's Star Wars, and I think you have to have a little bit more courage of your convictions there. That this thing, the fact that as you just kind of lay it out, people are going to show up even if they grumble, then you might as well be a little more daring and try it. But I guess, you know, the fact is that if Star Wars it's still, I guess, a little too early, I guess, to get too daring with it. And, you know, I'm hoping for it. But I see both sides of it as well.
Yeah. On Rogue One specifically, I'm still optimistic, and I don't think the sky is falling.
Is it walking?
Is it walking? I hope that I hope that whatever it is that they think needs to be massaged here can be worked out. But I'm optimistic on it. But I will say this, that it's hard not to think about the Marvel movies, and I know it's different because there were already Star Wars movies, but this is the Disney era, and this is also the we're going to get Star Wars movies forever era.
Yeah.
And you know what? They might have to have their Incredible Hulk and their Iron Man too. You know, it's like, you know, overall, Marvel's track record is amazing, but every single one, A, of course, people don't think every single one was awesome, and B, they had, you know, Incredible Hulk was an underperformer, and Iron Man 2 was a big hit, but that it was clearly not received as well as Iron Man 1. And you're going to have to deal with that just because that's the nature of the game, and everyone doesn't deliver every single time. So that might happen along the way. But I think that it's not like that. They're not going to have, say, their Incredible Hulk and then be like, we're out. You
Yeah,
know?
yeah. Well, I will definitively say, though, that I feel, and we can debate this if you would like, and we probably should since we're trying to get people engaged here.
Yeah.
I feel like there shouldn't be any classic characters showing up in these movies.
I think they should get to that point. Yeah, I mean, I think that they should get to a point where maybe it can be, you know, a peripheral character, maybe. But I would love to see one that is,
Dave Fortuna in high school.
There you go, young Bill Fortuna. But I don't think they all need to be no characters, but I think that definitely should be part of the equation. We should get some movies that are just completely not connected, except that it is in that world. And I guess maybe depending on the era, you could see a clone trooper, a stormtrooper, or a first order stormtrooper.
Yeah, like just walking by in the background.
But as far as actual named characters, I definitely think that we should get to a point where that doesn't need to be part of it. You know?
Okay, standalone movie. Just to completely contradict myself, if they are going to do a classic character, who, in all seriousness, who do you think really deserves their own solo movie? Standalone movie. There's no way you can avoid puns, people.
Man, that is tough.
I mean, a lot of people were saying, I think Joshua was suggesting, like, let's do Darth Maul and how he came under Darth Sidious's wing.
I think that is a great idea.
And also IGN's own Netflix series there of Darth Maul. That's an April Fool's reference right there.
I think that Maul is one that does leap to mind because people love him. He didn't have that much screen time in that one actual theatrical movie he was in. And I think that, sure, people love the idea of seeing more of the dark side and more. I mean, I really liked the book, what was it called? Lords of the Sith that came out last year that was about Palpatine and Vader. In fact, I was like, this could be a movie. All you need is Ian McDiarmid and the voice of James Earl Jones. They're not doing that, but that was like a Vader-Palpatine team-up book, and there were some good guys in it too.
Was it a road movie? Was it like a buddy comedy?
It was a stranded movie. It was like they're in a bad spot. They need to get out of together, but it was exciting, of course, to be like, oh, we're going to delve into the dark side of things. So I think Maul, there is a lot of appeal there. And I do think the bounty hunter world, I mean, I know Boba Fett's a weird case because, I agree, he'll never be cooler than when we knew the least about him, right? Yep. But you can't recapture that, and now we've seen him as a little kid. So I'm not against the Boba Fett movie in general, but I also would say that the bounty hunter world, a Bosk movie, taking that side of things, and of course we've heard now that that's probably what the live action TV show was going to be about if it had happened, and Boba Fett was even supposed to be a character on it possibly. So I think something with the bounty hunter world, whether it directly starred Boba Fett or not, and probably better if he didn't star in it. But I think taking those characters is ripe for an interesting idea.
Yeah. Well, we want to hear what you guys think. Should these Star Wars standalone movies, how much should they be tied at all to the classic films, whether it's through the use of characters or even a Star Wars movie without the Force, without Jedis, as Rogue One was supposed to be, it still may, and just your overall thoughts on the reshoots. Let us know in the comments. Let's move on from Star Wars and talk about that other lovely gift that keeps giving, comic book movies. Let's start with some late-breaking news right before we recorded. The Flash movie has its new director, Seth Grahame-Smith, was supposed to make his directorial debut on there. And
went to college with him.
Yep, full disclosure right here. Follows me on Twitter. That's my full disclosure. That's it. He didn't go to college with him. Did go to college with Kevin Feige, though. Are we done name dropping now? Let's stop name dropping. So anyways, Dope director Rick Famuyiwa.
Didn't go to college with him. See, I was hoping you were going to say it right away.
I'm sorry, I said it wrong. Famuyiwa. I'm sorry, Rick.
You ruined the timing of my joke, though.
I know. I'm sorry. He's going to direct the Flash movie. The director of Dope. I think that's, and according to Deadline, his pitch was more in line with sort of the comedic vision that they were going for, and I think that bodes well for DC movies, getting him on board.
Yeah,
hopefully they don't smother him with pressure.
I haven't seen Dope, so this is where I cannot really, with any authority, say anything except I hear it was good, and so I hope he makes a good Flash movie.
Yeah.
But it seems like a cool choice. Like it seems like Comic book movies are this place where it's like it's rare. I was gonna say we're already gonna get a Nolan, but don't forget when Nolan signed on, he wasn't Nolan. It's like
he did Memento
yeah,
and Insomnia,
yeah.
and that was it.
So that's you're more that's what you kind of get is like these directors on the rise that are on the cusp of.
He's been on the rise for like 10 years though. This guy,
Yeah.
he's been around since I think The Wood was like what 99 or something. Like he's been around for a while. So, but he's like grown into. He's got a lot of heat off of Dope. It was a Sundance smash, and then he directed that HBO movie Confirmation about Anita Hill. That I just watched that a few weeks ago, and so that shows his dramatic side. So I think it's an interesting pick. I still, look, I still have reservations about DC movies. We just did a podcast a couple of weeks ago about DC films and their course correction. I kind of want them to figure out their path here and really kind of stick to it and do make great movies. We all want that.
I'm also, of course, my biggest thing here is how weird it is that they're going to do a Flash movie while this TV show is not ending anytime soon. Has its own passionate following. I mean, we were talking about with headlines, I'm like, oh, I guess we need to make it clear that this is an article about the Flash movie, you know?
Yeah.
Because when I glanced at the news and it said Dope director, taking on the Flash, it was something like that. I was like, oh, is he going to direct an episode next season?
Like Kevin Smith did.
Yeah. I literally thought that's what it meant, that he was going to direct an episode. So that's the weirdest thing to me about them doing the Flash. But at the same time, Flash is a great character.
And we should say, if you don't know this, it's not Grant Gustin. It's completely separate. It's Ezra Miller, who you glimpsed in BVS. So and then the Arrow cast have also been griping more and more about like the two separate universes. I forget which. It was the actress who plays Speedy.
Oh, it's Willa Holland. Yeah.
She was saying how basically the Suicide Squad movie screwed up their plans to do more Suicide Squad stuff on Arrow, and then Stephen Amell saying he doesn't think Green Arrow is going to be in the DCEU anytime soon.
And some of this it's kind of extrapolating stuff we already knew because they talked openly before about how Arrow spoilers for the past year, but they killed Deadshot and then they killed Amanda Waller and they stopped using the Suicide Squad. So clearly it was like, they said Deadshot especially, who'd become very intertwined with a lot of the characters and had this like sort of redemptive arc. And then they're like, you can't use Deadshot anymore. So it does, sort of suck that I think that what must suck for them is the mixed messaging of them being like, oh, it's completely different. So we're going to make a Flash movie and don't even care that there's a Flash TV show and yet still curtail them on stuff. I think that's the weird part of it.
Yeah, well,
that's why I'd be
it's treating them, with disrespect.
Yeah, that's why I'd be bothered if I were them because it's like it's kind of a weird halfway murky point that they're at where.
And they're not above reaching out to the fans and expressing.
Yeah.
It's not very politically savvy of them to do that, but I think at that point, you're busting your ass in a set in Vancouver all day and like, hey, it would be nice to get into that giant movie since people know me as this character and now, I can't do it.
Or I'd think if I can't be in the giant movie, okay, but then the fact that you're not going to let us like play with all our toys, characters that we'd already established on the show. They're not even asking, can we introduce them? Like, we had them, and then you're like, you can't.
Like, Gotham doesn't seem to be getting these notes.
No.
Gotham's like, let's throw in Joker.
But the Flash, if those kind of early casting notices were to be believed, and look, it's no matter what, it's Barry Allen the Flash. So, of course, it's going to be Iris and probably Captain Cold and a ton of the same characters.
Yeah. Oh, we're already getting Boomerang and Suicide Squad.
Yeah, so it's just a very strange situation.
Speaking of strange situations, BVS, there we are again. Jeremy Irons throwing it under the bus this weekend. He just said that he understood why critics savaged it, and they did savage it, and he called it, quote, muddled, and he promised that Justice League Part 1 will be better because it'll be a simpler story. His words, a simpler, more linear kind of narrative. What do you think about that? I mean, the movie is not out on Blu-ray yet. The new Ultimate Edition trailer did show some new footage. We'll talk about that in a second, but just thoughts on that. I mean,
the two things I'll say is that one, Jeremy Irons, of course, is like, what are you gonna do? I'm Jeremy Irons. Like, it's like Ian McShane saying this stuff about Game of Thrones, giving away spoilers. I'm like, look, I am, an older, distinguished, beloved actor.
I've got my awards.
I don't care. I'm gonna say what I want. The other thing though is, and this is just part of the game of the cycle of things, is that when a movie comes out and it's not well received, the people, they still have to promote it, right? So they still had to do the junket scene for BVS, even as those bad reviews were coming in. And
we all know the meme.
Yeah. And that was our former coworker,
Butler, Tom Butler,
who got the sad Ben Affleck answer that has been memed to death. But you know what's going to happen when Justice League comes out? They're suddenly going to be much more open about issues they had with BVS, right? And you'll suddenly hear Affleck probably say, I didn't like how they did this and that. And he probably always thought that, but you can't really fault him. Why didn't you say that when the movie came out? Because it's part of his job to promote it. And he can't like torpedo, the movie.
Yeah, nobody wants to be the Josh Trank that throws her movie under the bus opening weekend. You can do that later, even though some would say you probably shouldn't do it at all. I mean, I know we were just talking about the Arrow casting, but that's different. They're thumbs up on their show. They're attacking a different entity there. But I think, in this particular case, I feel like the Justice League press tour is going to be really contentious because we don't talk about celebrity stuff on there, but obviously Amber Heard is in Justice League as Mara, and all the accusations she's made about Johnny Depp and their marriage. That's going to be a very, very, I'm sure, limited access press tour all around, because they're still going to be doing damage control, especially if the word on that movie is iffy, or if Suicide Squad doesn't work. It's going to be really interesting this time. When's the movie coming out again? I feel like
fall 2017, I believe.
It's not that far away.
It was November 2017. So I think it will be natural that people are going to ask them, and they will answer more honestly than they would have a couple months ago. How do you think this movie improves upon BVS? And they'll probably say some stuff that they were thinking when BVS came out, but they had to, be a good soldier. And
especially, too, if Zack Snyder's name is technically still on the movie. And, we don't quite know who's calling the shots on set over there. We haven't been on set. I don't know.
I've been on set every day.
Oh, yeah? How's it looking? Looking
cool,
pretty good,
Really cool stuff,
Oh, yeah? They got that Marvel touch now?
Yeah, definitely. It's all coming together.
Yeah, speaking of Marvel, let's move on from kicking this particular dead horse.
I hope Justice League is awesome.
I do too, man. I really want it to be good.
Be awesome, Justice League.
Speaking of Marvel, Captain Marvel is in the news. Oscar winner Brie Larson is reportedly in very early talks. No offer has been made, but she is Marvel's pick to be Carol Danvers. What do you think about that? IGN's biggest Brie Larson fan.
I love me some Brie Larson. Envy Adams. No, I think tremendously talented, likable, charismatic actress. Just won an Oscar for a reason, for Room, and she's one of those people where, because I just referenced Envy Adams. I love her in Scott Pilgrim, and if you look at her in Scott Pilgrim and you look at her in Room, it's like you're looking at two different people. I mean, she is truly an excellent actress. So I'm super excited by it. I think it's it makes perfect sense for the kind of actors Marvel goes after and gets these days. Again, right now it says she's the front runner, so she hasn't signed on. But
they say that she's leaning towards doing it, though. She seems like. I mean, and for her, do you think that's a stupid question? But I'm going to ask it: is it a good career move for her?
Oh, yeah, it's an excellent career move, because the movie she won an Oscar for was also a tiny movie that not a lot of people saw. So she's still in no way a famous. I mean, obviously she's got fans, but she's not like a celebrity.
I think she could walk into like Starbucks and not be recognized.
Absolutely, yeah. Especially not in LA, she's still not famous. A lot of people still haven't heard of her.
Or they get her mixed up with Alison Brie, who they still don't know, probably, is like, oh, it's that name I hear. Oh, it's not that one from the newsroom. No, that's Alison Pill.
Alison Brie will get her comic book movie too.
Yeah, everyone will. Especially with the Community connections here. Why don't you fill people in on this?
I just thought it was funny that obviously the Russos are now like the directors at Marvel, and they've in the last 2 Cap movies they gave Danny Pudi a cameo in Winter Soldier, and then Jim Rash one in Civil War. That was very, very specifically because they were the main directors on Community. And so it was funny to me because Brie Larson did have a recurring role as Abed, Danny Pudi's girlfriend, on 3 episodes of Community, although it was after the Russos weren't that involved. But it was I'm a huge Community fan, so if they want to just keep taking people from Community's cast. One I do want to address, saw some people debating yesterday about Brie Larson being pretty young for Captain Marvel.
Yeah, she's 26.
She's 26, and that's both on perception, just people saying, I would imagine Captain Marvel older, but also because she's supposed to be like a major in the Air Force before Origin. Valid, and I will also say that there's certainly, I'll open this door a little bit and say, yeah, like there's the sort of quiet, weird sexism that can pop up, I think, in Hollywood is pretty present when you look at the fact that Jeremy Renner, Mark Ruffalo, and of course Downey all cast as superheroes well into their 40s. And how much more hesitation I'm sure Hollywood would have, because I would used to talk about how I thought Tricia Helfer would make a good Captain Marvel, but
I always wanted Elizabeth Banks.
Yeah, and
who's also in her 40s.
Right, who are both in their 40s, probably be great. And yes, it's true. Studios, they can be very ageist and sexist and not play on a level playing field.
Eric Goldman says Marvel is ageist and sexist. There we go.
The system. So there is something valid to that, and I hope that as we go on, I mean, it's cool that Cate Blanchett's playing the villain in Thor Ragnarok, but she's still not getting to play like
because old people are evil, Eric.
Evil. But Brie Larson, A, she's great. B, when Marvel is looking ahead, because obviously they're going to sign all these people to multi-picture deals, and by the time the Captain Marvel movie opens, she'll be like 30, and so I can't. I gotta back my girl Brie. While I also acknowledge that hopefully we'll get to a place where Marvel has way more female superheroes, and that they're not all in their 20s.
I will say my cousin was in the Air Force,
teens.
and he, I want to say he left with the rank of major or maybe captain, and he was in his 30s.
Well, they'll do the line about like Carol Danvers, she was the youngest major. They'll do that. Graduated
writing the script for you right here. And the script is by, what's her name, Nicola
Pearl? Yeah.
Who did Guardians 2 with James Gunn, right?
She wrote the early drafts.
She's co-writing this one, I think.
She's co-writing Captain Marvel. Yeah, she wrote Gunn. They've basically said that Gunn did like a pretty dramatic rewrite of her stuff. But to her credit, no matter what made it on screen, she is what got Guardians made into a movie because Marvel basically responded to her script. And decided to move forward from there.
All right, so we're both on board then with the idea of Brie Larson playing Captain Marvel. We should just reiterate though that it is not a done deal. She has not formally been offered it, but she's in talks and it looks good. So we want to hear what you folks think about Brie Larson possibly playing Captain Marvel. Let us know in the comments below. Let's move on to, we were talking about Guardians a little while ago, I think, and Guardians 2 is in the rumor mill this week, Eric. Joe Blow claiming that Elizabeth Debicki's character is the villain, Aisha, also known as Paragon. Also known
as her.
And as Kismet.
And as Kismet, yeah.
That's a lot of names.
Yeah, but you know what? We were just talking about Carol Danvers, and she was Miss Marvel, and she was Binary, and she was Warbird, and then she was Captain Marvel. It's just
how much you want to bet Warbird is her call sign?
That could be that's very possible.
Right? There's a Nacha fan.
Yeah.
I'm already writing our Easter eggs list.
You know what story they'll never do in the MCU when Tony Stark was her sponsor in AA? Anyway, it's true.
That's awesome.
Carol
There's
Danvers
the Marvel one
had
shot.
A drinking problem, and Tony was her sponsor. Anyway.
Marvel one shot. There we go.
Going back to Kismet and Aisha. And
tell folks a little bit about this character.
No, I should say it's one of those characters I don't remember everything about offhand. The biggest thing I remember about her. Which
I don't remember her being called her.
She was called her originally because she was the female counterpart to Adam Warlock, who was him when he was introduced. And it was sort of an Adam and Eve cosmic,
They have that look with the golden skin and golden hair. And
yeah, because he was introduced much earlier, and so all I remember is that she was introduced as sort of the female version of what Adam Warlock was.
Yeah,
so.
and she had in a lot of the images that I've seen from the older comics, she had this like ridiculously skimpy outfit that I'm pretty sure is not going to be what it looks like on screen. Yeah. But what do you think about the use of that character, or what it might suggest about Guardians 2?
I mean, the biggest thing is Adam Warlock himself, who is, a much bigger character that fits in a lot to the Infinity Stone storyline in the comics, is like a big enemy of Thanos in the comics. So introducing her, and so every time I say that, it sounds funny, but yeah, it seems like this could be another, we already expect Guardians 2, while not a Infinity War lead-in movie per se, it will still have some stuff for it. So I think that using that character, possibly either leading to Adam Warlock, or maybe he's also in the movie. It can all just be these.
Do you think that was the role that McConaughey was up for? Was Adam Warlock?
I mean, I think some people.
He would be perfect.
He would be, and there's something about the sort of
Texas Adam Warlock.
Yeah, I see everything, man.
Yeah, exactly.
Because Adam Warlock did come out of sort of like a late '60s
trippy
stream of expand your consciousness sort of thing.
That means drugs.
I think that. Yeah, and then a lot of the '70s stuff, they've even talked about, some of the people who made that stuff, about the cosmic Marvel stuff, what they were doing when they came up with those.
I wonder if they
stories.
Remember it.
There's a great book that came out a couple years ago that's like the unofficial story of Marvel or something like that.
Yeah.
And they talked to some of those guys about some of their like sort of LSD experiences that they're like, now we're going to do a cosmic cube story. So I think that I think it probably will tie in a more. Again, I don't expect it to be, and I think Gunn has even said that, no, this movie is not like a prequel setup just to Infinity War, but there's going to be some connections. So I think that might lead.
And we do know that at least some of the Guardians are going to be in Infinity War.
Yeah, which seems,
Now, so you don't think that Guardians 2 will work in any sort of Infinity Stone?
Oh, there could be another stone. We still got 2 more.
Well, because
everyone
that leads into another rumor is Thor Ragnarok that Joe Blow was reporting as well. Thor Ragnarok is reportedly Thor is seeking to attain this weapon that could trigger Ragnarok. I'm thinking he wants it not so he starts Ragnarok, so he can prevent it, and he gets kind of stuck on this Planet Hulk style planet. But do you think that weapon is probably an Infinity Stone, and which one? I'm thinking it's the space-time one, right? That's still not.
I think so, yeah.
Because that would make sense, like, if it handles space-time well, it would bring about the end times, at least for Asgard.
And don't forget, the last time we saw Thor in Age of Ultron, after his very awkward subplot, that was.
He takes a bath. A sexy bath.
Sexy bath. But no,
sexy angry bath.
Sexy angry bath. He's the one who sees the stones and literally says to Tony and Steve at the end, someone's been manipulating things behind the scenes the past few years. I'm going to go figure that out.
Yeah.
So Thor Ragnarok really does sound like the lead-in movie to Infinity War. We've heard inferences that it's going to be the Winter Soldier of Phase 3 as far as like truly things change in a huge way. I believe it is now the movie that opens before Infinity War, or at least it opens much closer to Infinity War than it was because it got pushed back a couple times.
Do you think they'll really destroy Asgard? Because that would be ballsy. It would be like in the Trek reboot where they destroyed Vulcan. And
I think they might because A, it could always come back like it did in the comics, and B, because it is Asgard, it's not Earth, it's not like a major city on Earth. It could have. And if Thor truly, if they want that movie and to really motivate things, but also I think they want to elevate the Thor series because it is seen as the also ran, and that unlike Cap and Iron Man, there hasn't been a movie everyone's loved.
Yeah.
So maybe if you do the Thor who's lost everything sort of.
Well, and also though it gives a sense of menace then to Thanos because he has to win one.
Yeah.
You can't go into Infinity War with a divided Avengers and. One where, spoiler alert, but Civil War, none of the Avengers die.
Right.
You need something to show like this is a real grave threat. If you've already, defeated an alien invasion to Earth, I mean, you should feel fairly confident that you can handle this Thanos guy. But if this is a guy that just destroyed an entire realm
and characters we know, you know,
like
recognizable.
if they kill off Loki, at least for now.
Right,
you know?
right. So yeah, kill the Warriors 3. I think that's a definitely possibility, and I agree with you. Yeah, they do need to have Thanos do something that is a tangible, you know, really sort of a gut punch of a move that's both a big move but also emotional. So I think that's a good theory.
Yeah. Also, one thing about Thor Ragnarok, if they did kill off Tom Hiddleston's character Loki, it might free up Tom Hiddleston to play James Bond, which is the rumor. Segue.
Hey.
Rumor is that he is, I think it was Birth Movies Death who originally started, and then it's been picked up everywhere and kind of run with it, but that he is in talks, no offer has been made, but is in pretty deep talks with Barbara Broccoli, who runs Eon Productions, and as Sam Mendes, the director of Skyfall and Spectre, said, like, it's not a democracy, it's her say, you know, that's, you know, that he is basically probably going to be the next Bond if Daniel Craig opts out. One, what do you think about Tom Hiddleston as Bond? And then we're going to talk about some of the director rumors too.
Sure. You know, I think if you'd asked me a couple years ago, I would have been a little more hesitant. But I think I've seen him in more things now. He's gotten to show different nuances, show he can be tougher.
Have you seen Night Manager? I haven't.
I've only seen parts of Night Manager, including some exclusive clips on IGN, but including one that I saw we used for the story where he's kind of beating the hell out of a guy. So I think Hiddleston would be, you know, a good Bond. I'm just curious, you know, is Craig really done or not? Because as people keep pointing out, he's got one more movie contractually.
I think there's wiggle room in that. I think I feel like it was a clause. I don't. Yeah. I have a feeling he's not as signed, sealed, and delivered for it as need be. And frankly, maybe the series could use that because Spectre, while it made money, you'd be hard pressed to find people who liked it.
Yeah, I just heard someone, I don't remember who, but someone was saying something that I did agree with, though, which is that it's almost a shame, though, if he's done on such a poorly received movie, considering he had two of the best received Bond movies. And Brosnan
went out on
well, Brosnan only arguably had one movie people loved.
Yeah.
But I don't know, just but we'll have to see because there's also
Roger Moore went out with View to a Kill, which isn't great, but awesome song though.
My favorite Bond song. I've sang it at karaoke a few times. Killed it.
Sing it for the people now.
Yes.
But what do you think though of the idea of essentially, it'll be 10 years of Craig, and in the end of Spectre, he literally drives off. So it is a perfect kind of way for him to walk away. I really feel like he's not coming back. Sam Mendes isn't coming back.
Sam Mendes is definitely not coming back.
He has said that. He's like, I am not coming back.
I definitely think that's it's very plausible. We're in a weird holding pattern with Bond anyway because they don't have a distributor right now. They'll get one, but their deal with Sony is up, and so who's going to release it? It sounds like we're at least a couple years away from the next one.
Yeah, there's no script. There's no, there's a lot yet to be done. But rumor has it that Suzanne Bier, who directed Hiddleston and The Night Manager, might be the first female director to helm a Bond movie. Maybe they want to put some elements in place and make it kind of a more attractive package to take out to these new studios. I mean, even more attractive than coming off a series that is broke $1 billion on Skyfall, and was nominated for all these awards and everything. Granted, again, like Spectre, I didn't like the movie. I thought it was okay. I didn't hate it like other people did, and I would have loved to have seen Craig go out with another Skyfall or Casino Royale. But hey, he had a better track record than most of the Bonds. Poor Timothy Dalton didn't, really. His ship never came in. So we want to hear from you guys. What do you think about Tom Hiddleston possibly as James Bond? I would suggest go watch some of his other stuff. If you only know him as Loki, I mean, that would, some people are like, oh, he'll be a throwback to like the Roger Moore, Pierce Brosnan kind of wink and a nod, and I'm sure he will be. But he's also, there is a dangerous kind of undercurrent to the guy that I think is really good. And that he seems like it would make people underestimate him as Bond, which would be kind of a new way to do Bond, which is, oh, look at this, this preppy, well-tailored guy. Oh, I can take him, and then he clears the room.
I hope he wears like an 80s movie villain. He has a sweater tied around, polo shirts and a sweater tied around.
Yeah, he's the bad guy from like an 80s college comedy.
Yeah.
He's also, he went to Eton, I don't know, I didn't go there. It's a British thing. Krupa or Tilly can correct me, which is the same school that Bond and Bond creator Ian Fleming went to. Now, I just want to rattle off some other news items real quick. Let me see here. Okay, Jake Gyllenhaal is attached to star and produce a big screen version of the video game The Division. That should interest you guys.
Will this
Ubisoft.
be his Deadpool after he had Prince of Persia not do so hot?
I know, right?
In the video game realm.
We will see. The Rock is going to play Doc Savage for Shane Black, who told our own Chris Tilley that it will be a period piece. It has to be a period piece, and also that the character it's definitely humorous in that he is a guy who's so aloof and arrogant because he's been trained to be the epitome of perfection since childhood that he has no social skills dealing with people. So that's going to be fun to watch.
I think it'll be a great combination there.
TJ Miller has been cast as an online troll in Ready Player One. About tells you all that I think I need to know. I think he's actually probably going to kill it.
Yeah.
No Transformers or Ninja Turtles crossover movie planned, according to producer Brad Fuller. So Brad Fuller, which I know is actually going to break your heart.
Break my heart. I understand they're both at Paramount, but they're owned by different people. Like Paramount doesn't own either of those franchises. Like they're leasing them.
Although they are working on a whole Hasbro universe.
Yeah, but Ninja Turtles aren't Hasbro. I mean, so the Hasbro universe makes more sense than let's put Ninja Turtles in with
that's a whole Nickelodeon thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Transformers: The Last Night, Transformers 5 will see the return of, and this one's for you, Chris Carl, Megatron. That's how Chris Carl used to say it.
Megatron will be in a Transformers movie?
I know. Hey, man, they killed him off at the end of the third one, pulled his head right out, like Spine 2. Come on.
He's dead a couple times. But,
Yeah, he was at the bottom of the ocean and everything.
Oh, yeah.
So, yes, Megatron is back. What a shocker. And then, let's see, what else do we have? Okay, we have to talk about monster trucks. We got to talk about this trailer. I don't know if you guys have seen it or not, but it's the most ridiculous looking damn thing I've ever seen. No, not that I've ever seen, but I've seen of late. And it's from the director of Ice Age, and it stars
it's live action.
Lucas Tell, Havoc from the X-Men movies. Yep. And it's literally a monster truck. It's a monster from space or the ocean or whatever hides in this young guy's truck.
But it's like completely like where the engine and everything would be is this like tentacled, smiley faced octopusy.
She's like what's a squiggly squid or whatever that cartoon character was from the 70s.
So you see, guys, he's a monster, but he's inside a truck.
And the truck can now do extra things because the monster is basically
monster truck,
right?
When you watch this trailer, if you haven't already.
And he takes selfies, the kid takes selfies with the creature.
Of course. When I was watching the trailer, I kind of glanced away when it first began. And I didn't know why Jim sent it to me at first. And I thought, this has to be like a sci-fi original movie or a straight to DVD.
Nope.
Or I couldn't believe that it was a theatrical film that Paramount is putting out.
Yes. From the director of Ice Age, this blockbuster franchise.
Yeah, but I'm super excited.
You have to see this. It's on the site.
I will go opening night to see Monster Trucks.
Friday the 13th is a new movie has been in the works now for a while. And
Jim knows I want to do a set visit, but they won't start making the movie, so
there's
no set to visit.
We know it's not going to be found footage, but producer Brad Fuller also said this week that it's going to be an origin story, and that Pamela Voorhees, the mom, Jason's mom, is also going to be there. Haven't we gotten Jason's origin enough times now?
Yeah, and my fear is that they'll overdo it in the way that like Rob Zombie's Halloween did, where it's like, oh, okay, he killed his parents, but now let's go to the insane asylum and have all these different scenes and scenes that maybe seem like we're being sympathetic about him as a troubled kid before, no, he's just a psycho killer. So yeah, I mean, I don't mind them in passing, including his origin. And I will say, I'm enough of a Friday the 13th geek to say, when they said, oh, we're going to see his father in this one. Well, my first question was, are they going to use the name Elias Voorhees? Because that was his father's name. You know, they wrote some scenes for Friday the 13th Part 6 with his father, but they didn't include those. They made it into the novelization. They did mention the name Elias in Jason Goes to Hell, so it was part of the original canon. So, will they use the name Elias? And so
now we have to do a casting call for who should play him.
Who will be Elias Voorhees? So there was a part of me that couldn't resist being like, ooh, we're going to see Jason's dad. But at the same time, I don't need 45 minutes of Jason's origin, you know? Yeah. No one needs to see. I actually thought, again, I liked the 2009 remake. I thought it was one of the better of the horror movie glut of remakes. And I liked how they handled the original movie being the opening credits, you know? Down to it being set in 1980. That was enough. Okay, his mom, she's part of the lore. You want that? It's like she is his Uncle Ben.
His Martha.
Right. But I don't know how much screen time you need to present. An origin story for Friday the 13th seems like we're just going to take too much time to get to Jason killing people with a hockey mask.
Now, I want to move on from that to sequels, because sequels are getting a lot of analysis now that people are sick of them. And on the eve of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Out of the Shadows opening in theaters and tracking at half of what the original, the 2014 movie, I should say, made, which was, I think it's tracking at about 37, so that means, that the original opened to about, 70-something million. What do you think about this past weekend's box office of Alice Through the Looking Glass tanking as hard as it did? This is a sequel to a movie that made $1 billion.
To a movie that was the sixth movie ever to make $1 billion.
It opened with 116 million, okay? This one, the sequel, Through the Looking Glass, opened for the 3-day weekend with 27 million. For the 4-day weekend, because it was Memorial Day here in the States, $33 million. That's not, it's barely a quarter of what the opening, holy crap.
Oh
dude.
yeah, that was shocking. I mean,
what do you think's going through Disney's head right now?
For a lot of reasons, I think, even though Pirates is a much more established franchise, the fact that they have a finished Pirates movie on the shelf, well, filmed, obviously there's posted, they have to be wondering about that. And I don't know, I was talking on Twitter about this with some people about the fact, like, oh, is it going to make them, because they're going so all in on the live action versions of their classic stuff. I'm like, well, it's not going to stop that. It's not going to curtail that, especially when Beauty and the Beast was the most viewed trailer ever.
And Jungle Book's a huge hit.
But maybe it will stop them from doing as many sequels to those movies, even though they have Maleficent sequel in development. The other thing though with Alice, I mean, Alice was a weird case because I personally thought it was a terrible movie, the 2010 Alice, and I wasn't alone on that, but it was $1 billion hit. That movie's biggest problem, and there were other factors, including the fact that 3D was such a sensation at the time. It was coming off of Avatar. All that's true, but I also think if they had that Alice sequel come out 2 to 3 years after, it would have done a lot better. I mean, I think the fact that it was 6 years later and the 3D craze was over, the fact that it was a bad movie, some people who were really into it had kind of forgotten about it. Like, waiting that long was like the last straw.
And also, I mean, it does make, and I don't want to kind of diverge too far into Avatar, but like, when those sequels finally show up, it'll be a decade after that. And then X-Men Apocalypse didn't do as well as X-Men Days of Future Past in its opening. It opened 3-day weekend of 65 million and then about 80 million for the 4-day. It's the 6th highest grossing in the series. So it's not that great, but Neighbors 2 underperformed. And then on the horizon we have Star Trek Beyond, we have Finding Dory, we have Jason Bourne, we have The Conjuring 2, Purge Anarchy, Ice Age, whatever the hell number they're up to now, and then Now You See Me Too.
Yeah.
So, I mean, do you think any of these movies should be nervous?
Nervous to an extent. I mean, I think it was Vanity Fair was saying how what we might be seeing is sort of sequels going back to what they classically were, which is if you looked in the 80s and I think even into the early 90s, sequels, including to giant blockbuster movies, it was expected it would not make as much as the original.
Yeah.
And I'm talking Empire, the Indiana Jones sequels, Superman, Batman.
Trek movies.
Yeah, the big movies. The sequels were all considered success, but it was also understood, oh, you're not gonna get that sensation thing again. And then the past decade or so has really gone the other way.
Yeah.
I'd actually say more like the last 15 years, where it's like, oh no, even if you had a blockbuster first one, like the next one's gonna be even
Well,
bigger.
the Pirates movies prove that too.
Yeah, no, there was
because
a
Pirates 4 made a ton.
There was a lot of cases like that. I think that had to do with the fact that while these were giant blockbusters were happening, it was also the expansion of the market into the world was growing. We might have peaked out on that, and I think it might be a reset of expectations. It's not like Hollywood's going to stop making sequels; they've always done sequels. But they might see, okay, maybe we maybe we have to expect that even if it's well received, we only make 70% of the last one. Maybe we budget accordingly, and maybe we don't do quite as many. That might be what happens,
Awesome. All right, well, that's going to do it for this week's show. Terry is on vacation. She'll most likely be back on the show next week. We hope so, because I think it's been great that we've been able to rely on good folks like you and Joshua who don't always get a chance to come on the show. Thank you for doing this. I really appreciate it. We're going to try and get you guys, maybe rotate in some more folks soon, so I can get some things done maybe. But follow us on Twitter at the Eric Goldman, at Jim Vejvoda. Send us your thoughts at keepinitreal@ign.com. Check us out on multiple platforms, including our PS4 app. And as always, for all things movies, keep it here on IGN.